Once upon a time, there was a prince called Demos. But Prince Demos was sick and dying, which worried all the people living in his kingdom. The cleverest physicians in the land tried in vain to defeat the illness killing the noble prince, but they had to come to him and admit defeat. "Sire," they said, "your time is short. You must make your plans for the future of the kingdom." Prince Demos had no heirs or successors. He was the last in the line of a noble house. The fact that there was no obvious candidate to succeed him and rule his kingdom worried the prince. He feared that his death would cause fear amongst his subjects and lead to violence and anarchy. What to do? The prince mumbled to himself. Yes, what to do? During his reign, Prince Demos had heard many stories of the wise men and sages who lived in his kingdom. It struck him that they could help him decide the future of the kingdom. Although weakened by his illness, Prince Demos' mind was as strong as ever, so he formulated a plan. Without delay, he sent out his officials to the four corners of the kingdom to find the 40 wisest men in the kingdom and bring them to his palace. He hoped that in summoning them to his palace, they might be able to decide who amongst them would be a wise and just ruler of his kingdom once he died. Within days, the 40 wisest men in the kingdom stood in one of the grandest halls in Prince Demos' palace and waited for him to address them. While the wise men waited for Prince Demos, they began to talk amongst themselves. In no time at all, the group of 40 men divided equally into two groups of 20. Why they are divided exactly into two equal groups is a question to which I doubt anyone really knows the answer. However, it seems reasonable to assume that, like people the world over, as they talked with each other, they became drawn to those most like themselves. This natural process then led them to split into two groups of 20. A hush descended upon the guests when Prince Demos entered. The wise men and members of the court attempted to bow to the prince, to bestow the traditional greetings that protocol demanded. "Thank you, but time is short. So, let's dispense with the usual protocol," Prince Demos said as he pointed to the two banqueting rooms in front of him. As the prince spoke, his servants opened the doors of both rooms to reveal two long banqueting tables with enough food and drink to feed an army. "I invite you to enter and enjoy the feast prepared," Prince Demos said to the 40 wise men. "The only rule for tonight's feast is that you may only use the spoons I have provided to eat and drink your food." As the wise men had split into two groups of 20, it seemed natural that one group went into the room on the left and the other entered the room on the right. Prince Demos, weak from his illness, retreated to his chambers. Upon entering their banqueting room, the groups of wise men went straight to the task of consuming the feast in front of them using the spoons provided. The spoons were an extraordinary size, which made the task of eating the feast all the more challenging. In fact, each spoon was long enough for each wise man to eat from the plate of the man across from him. At the start of the evening, both banqueting rooms looked identical in every way, down to the delicate gold lining in the curtains and dishes of every kind that would satisfy even the most discerning appetite. By halfway through the evening, the room on the right remained in its original state with only the minor stain on the floor due to accidents caused when maneuvering the spoons, and in the general course of good humor and merrymaking. Each wise man in the banqueting room on the right had noticed it was difficult to use the spoons to feed themselves, so each took it in turns to offer the wise man across from them the food and refreshments from their spoon. The overall atmosphere in this room was quite pleasant if a little odd, given that each wise man was feeding the other wise man opposite him. In the banqueting room to the left, things were less amiable. One or two of the wise men in this room had begun to tear at the curtains with frustration. Others were stamping on the oversized spoons, trying to bend them into a more manageable size so they could eat the feast. Still others were a bit more ruthless and had started stealing food from the men beside them. By halfway through the evening, this banqueting room was quite a sight, with torn curtains, food on the floor, and doors and skirting. In short, this room was filled with a group of angry, frustrated, and hungry men, barely on speaking terms with each other and cursing with increasing intensity. An old man entered this banqueting room. His back was bent over with old age, and he leaned on an old, crooked stick. He was ushered to a seat by one of the servants that were attending to both groups of wise men. The old man sat and looked about him. He coughed slightly, but no one paid him any attention, nor did they see that his throat was parched. Eventually, the old man procured some water for himself, but when he tried to drink it, he discovered it was bitter. It had been contaminated. As the old man put down his cup of bitter water, he witnessed some of the men hitting each other with their fists while others were being as violent with the spoons and even the food. The old man, weary of what he saw, signaled for one of the servants to help him, so he could visit the other banqueting room. As the old man entered the other banqueting room, he discovered that quite a few of the wise men were already up dancing. Others provided a merry tune with their musical instruments, such as the harmonica and flute. Walking from the first banqueting room into this one had taken its toll on the old man. As he sat on a vacant seat, A sigh escaped his lips. "Would you like some refreshments?" a wise man asked as he offered him a drink from his large spoon. "Yes, thank you," the old man said, drinking until his thirst was quenched. The conversation and general merriment of the wise men in the room made the old man feel elated, and he completely forgot his ailments and lost track of time. A few hours later, and a bit drunk, the old man called for the servants, and they came to carry him away to his bed. In the morning, the 40 wise men were summoned to the great hall. As before, they stood in the groups they had naturally chosen. On the balcony, the old man stood before them. The wise men looked at him as he stared at them. Old man dropped his stick, stood up straight, pulled off his cloak and mask to reveal the unforgettable features of Prince Demos. Naturally, this provoked noisy chatter amongst the 40 wise men. But Prince Demos motioned his hands, indicating he wished to address them. The chorus of voices fell into a hushed silence and the air filled with tension. "I have spent time in your company to decide who amongst you could be my successor, to find in one of you the right kind of wisdom needed in a ruler. I have now made my decision. But before I reveal it to you, I would like to make some observations." The 40 wise men looked at each other with puzzled expressions but listened attentively. "Those of you who were in the banqueting room to the left seemed to display a wisdom of a self-centered and ruthless kind, and when I was in disguise as an old man, you ignored me. I found that your actions had contaminated the drinking water and also damaged a significant portion of the room. Those of you who were in the banqueting room to the right, I thank you for a most pleasant evening. I enjoyed myself immensely. I soon forgot my pains and, by the end of the evening, I was quite drunk. Thank you once again for treating me as one of your own and including me in your company. I have found your wisdom to be thoughtful, compassionate and humorous." The 40 wise men looked at Prince Demos and waited for his decision with anticipation. "I now decree that upon my death, my kingdom shall be shared equally amongst the 20 wise men in the banqueting room to the right." Prince Demos' statement caused uproar from the group of wise men on the left. But the reaction of the group of wise men on the right was most bizarre. They had huddled together to confer with each other. When the group on the right reappeared, they addressed Prince Demos. "Sire, we must decline your generous offer." "Are you mad?" shouted one or two of the wise men on the left while a few of their companions joined in with loud jeers. "Are you sure I can't persuade you to rule my kingdom?" Prince Demos asked, sounding tired and weary. "Sire, may we suggest an alternative?" "Please, speak freely," the ailing prince said. "As you said earlier, our friends on the left have a wisdom of a kind, and we have wisdom of another. But even your servants who have worked with patience and diligence have their own kind of wisdom, too, born from their hard work. Wisdom is found in the humblest or the richest and even in the most foolish of your subjects. So, we propose that each one of your subjects, rich or poor, lind or lame, no matter their status, be given equal say in the affairs of the kingdom. But how will decisions be made, and order maintained?" One of the wise men on the left asked with a jeer. "We propose that all issues be debated and voted upon, with each man using their own wisdom to agree upon a position that would benefit the common good. As for order, if each man has an equal stake in maintaining the kingdom, he will act out of both duty and self-interest to keep his own rights and the rights of his fellow men. Because we recognize that power can corrupt, we also propose that those who wish to represent anyone other than themselves be elected by secret ballot and for a limited number of years, with a maximum term in office. That will minimize the opportunity for corruption to take place." Having listened to these wise men, Prince Demos signed a decree proclaiming that upon his death, his kingdom would be ruled by his subjects. Each person now had a duty and a self-interest to maintain their rights and the rights of their fellow citizens to decide the affairs of the kingdom. Soon after his proclamation, Prince Demos succumbed to his illness and died. Upon his death, his people voted on their first order of business, which was to call their new state democracy after their beloved prince.